What if an ancient holy book, revealed more than 1,400 years ago, contains scientific knowledge that we can only understand through modern technology? What if one of the most fundamental mysteries of nature that sustains life on Earth, photosynthesis, was described in a revelation at a time when science had yet to develop? This is the story of how this scientific truth transformed the life of a renowned German scientist, Dr. Wilhelm Knoll. Dr. Wilhelm Knoll was a prominent expert in biotechnology and plant biology. Like many other scientists, he wasn't just focused on experiments in the lab, but also on the bigger questions of life. One of his main areas of research was photosynthesis, the vital process by which plants use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and glucose, the source of energy for living beings. Yet, behind his profound scientific research, something greater awaited him, a spiritual journey he never anticipated. One day, Dr. Knoll was introduced to the Quran, the holy book of Islam. Initially, he read it without any expectations, but then he came across a verse that states, "With it, water, he causes to grow for you crops, olives, date palms, grapes, and every kind of fruit." Surah An-Nahl 11. At first glance, this verse seemed simple, describing how water gives life to plants. However, for Dr. Knoll, a scientist deeply familiar with the intricacies of photosynthesis, the verse spoke far beyond a physical phenomenon. He noticed how the verse hinted at the complex relationship between water, light, and life on Earth. Photosynthesis, the very core of life, is a process that humanity has only begun to understand through modern science in the past few centuries. Plants, in their extraordinary way, use sunlight as a source of energy to produce food and oxygen, which sustain all living beings. When he read this verse, Dr. Knoll was captivated. He remarked, "The Quran doesn't merely talk about water growing plants, but it describes how water, sunlight, and plants interact scientifically. This modern scientific knowledge already existed in an ancient scripture." For Dr. Knoll, the Quran's description of the connection between water and life was perfectly aligned with science. He reflected on how a text revealed more than 1,400 years ago, at a time when scientific knowledge about plants was extremely limited, could provide such an accurate depiction of the process of life. This was no coincidence. For him, it was compelling evidence that the Quran had a divine origin. "I have studied photosynthesis my entire life, but the Quran offered me a perspective that not only touched my mind as a scientist, but also my heart," said Dr. Knoll. After years of delving into logic and scientific knowledge, Dr. Knoll finally concluded that the Quran is more than just a religious book. It is a revelation that encompasses all aspects of life, both physical and spiritual. This discovery not only deepened his understanding, but also transformed his beliefs. After further study, Dr. Knoll eventually decided to embrace Islam. His knowledge of science only strengthened his conviction that there is a greater truth behind the universe.